everybody, this is Craig Tanner for The Mindful Eye and The Daily Critique. Today's image was created by Derek, who's an intermediate photographer. Derek shot this at Vogelsang Peak in Yosemite National Park. Camera was a Canon 5D Mark II. Lens is 24 to 105, zoom at 24 millimeters, and that is the effective focal length because this is a full frame sensor camera. And Derek was working at ISO 100, f22, and then 3 bracketed exposures using shutter speed to express to us as the viewer a dynamic range that's greater than what he could capture in one frame. I want to come back and talk about a few technical things in a few minutes, but I just want to get into what I like about this image. There are a lot of things I like about it, and I want to focus in on a couple that could be takeaways for you if you want to get better at shooting these kinds of traditional big scenic landscape photographs. Derek has got a real powerful quality of light here for shooting these kinds of shots that really help to create the illusion that we can move through the image, not just across and up and down. It's got a quality of light that I call split light, and split light is a quality of light in a big scenic landscape where we have some version of direct light hitting in the background and then ambient or soft light hitting in the foreground. Almost always, not every time, because you could have some scenarios with storm light in the middle of the day where this could happen right in the middle of the day. It could happen at high noon, but for the most part this split light happens early and late, and because of that, most of the time what we have is very warm light hitting in the background, and you're seeing that here and up in the clouds. And then your foreground in these shots is going to be lit by the rest of the sky, which a lot of times is going to be overall very blue. So the split light does a couple of things for us in terms of creating the illusion of depth. It will create a cool foreground and a warm background, and the difference between warm and cool will create the illusion of moving through the image or design depth. It also will create a low contrast in the foreground and high contrast in the background in terms of the difference between highlight and shadows. And that is something else that will create the illusion of being able to move through. Warm appears to move towards us, cool appears to recede, contrast appears to move towards us, low contrast, darker appears to move away from us. And the push and pull between those things creates the illusion that you can actually get inside this picture. So I wanted to mention split light is a great quality of light to work with for these kinds of shots. And then I also wanted to talk about repetitions. One of the most powerful ways, if we want to work traditionally, photograph beautiful things beautifully, it's one of the most powerful ways to create visual unity. Derek, with his subject choice and camera position and the moment in which he's clicked the shutter with this incredible sky, has such a strong sense of visual unity based on repetition from near to far. If you look at two of the highest energy ideas in the whole image, this cloud and the water here, you can see that they're very much alike in shape and in the way they're surrounded by simple negative space and in how they're placed in the frame. But if we are to look at sort of a general structure, background versus foreground, you really sort of have negative space, positive space, negative space, and so on and so forth, kind of a moving arc and a dominating idea. The same thing down here, same kind of concept. Really beautiful sense of repetition. And a lot of times when I'm shooting these kinds of shots, I'll get really low to just simplify the middle ground by cutting down on it. And in this shot, Derek's camera position is higher, and even the middle ground part of this image is just stunningly beautiful with great detail. Beautiful reflection here in this alpine lake. A really beautiful diagonal leading line to bring us down to this high energy area of the image. Just a lot of things to like about this shot. Let's talk about a couple of technical things, and then let's talk about some ideas for further editing this in Adobe Photoshop. The two technical things I wanted to mention here, one has to do with this concept of needing to bracket these kinds of shots and potentially do some kind of high dynamic range work. The average digital camera these days, in one frame, you can record a dynamic range of about 7 to 8 stops. And in a scene like this, there's an enormous amount of dynamic range. We got everything from a very dark closed shadow all the way up to direct light in the background. And unless we want to try and in one file come in here, see expose for this, and then come into the shadow and open it way up, which could be disastrous because there may not be enough information in the low end of the file down in here. We have noise and stuff. It really makes sense to either do what Derek has done, shoot a range of exposures and blend those using the digital darkroom, Or we could use something called a split neutral density filter. Filter that's dark at the top with neutral density and then graduates into clear resin or glass, and we could put the dark part of the filter up in here to help to even this out. When I talked about the exposure tree of information, I said that Derek stopped all the way down to f22, and if we want to talk about depth of field, we're taught that if we go to smaller apertures, we'll imply a greater range of sharpness from near to far in the image. And this is one of these classic landscapes where we could say it's traditional to imply sharpness from near to far. Problem with stopping down to small apertures like this to increase this is that it runs counter to an optical aberration that increases when we stop down to small apertures, and that's diffraction. Can't go way into diffraction. If you click on content and then go to foundation concepts, we have a good video on diffraction if you don't know what it is. And I'm just going to say in a nutshell that for most zooms that would have a super wide on the wide end so that you could shoot this kind of landscape shot, most of the time, this is just on average, you're not going to want to stop down much further than f11. You're going to be losing so much sharpness to diffraction, it won't matter how much depth of field you're getting. One other thing that I want to say about this particular shot is that this foreground area down in here doesn't even need to be sharp. You've got real dark shadows where you don't need perfect detail, and then you have a subject that's actually moving. So motion is already implied there. And this is the kind of shot where you could focus pretty far in relative to kind of the normal rule of thumb, which means that you really don't need to stop down far here to imply sharpness. From here, 24 millimeters, all the way back here, that's critically sharp in a big print. And without getting more technical about depth of field, which we could go on and on and on about it, I'll stop there on the technical stuff. Let's talk about a different version for this image where we do some tweaks inside the digital darkroom in Adobe Photoshop. I copied the background here, and then I did some work on it. Do something that I do to a lot of big scenic landscapes. Some people are traditionalist purists. They won't change any editorial content. I am not. And small areas of high contrast I will digitally garden out because they have so much visual weight, and these little areas of high contrast can really start to make a picture busier than it might need to be. So this is before I cloned out areas or healed out areas like this that are real high contrast, and then here is after. So this is before and after. See what you think about that. One of the things that happens for me when I look at this image is that for my taste, the bottom of this is very heavy and the top part is very light. Now that can drive depth and can help to pull us all the way to the back part of the shot, but if we start to build up a lot of speed here and it just keeps getting brighter and brighter and lighter, we can get either pulled out of the frame going in this direction, or we can just feel that the top and bottom are not working together. And to me, this shot has such a strong sense of visual unity just based on space shapes and quality of line that from a value standpoint, I would like to dramatically darken up here to do a better job of balancing from top to bottom and containing the eye, and also make the background more dramatic. So I did a curves adjustment. There's before and there's after, and I thought, you know what, I'd like to go even further with it, and I did. I duplicated that layer. Now, I overdo things for the daily critique to really drive my point home. So I could probably stand to back up just a little bit from this, but I'm going to leave it like that for now just to make my point. This is where we started so far, and this is where we are with that move. Next thing that I did was I just used a levels adjustment, and I applied it locally to give a little bit more of a sense of local contrast and just a little bit more sense of luminosity, sort of, or luminance moving through the image. And then I came in and I used selective color to clean that green up a little bit to make it pop a little bit more. It's kind of muddy red, yellow, and again, if that's the way that you saw it and that's the way that you want to record it and you're sort of a purist, then great. If we're just now talking about design, I think making that green a little bit more true green and vibrant could play very well off of the feeling of red and blue and kind of pushing more towards the idea of pure color, color separating. This is, I think, subtle, if I remember correctly. So there's where, there's before and there's popping that and getting rid of some of the yellow and red. I just want to show you something too about cleaning up greens. I did it using selective color, and let's just go back in here and go to the greens. If we go to the greens and move sliders around, not much happens at all. And sort of a classic inside of Photoshop is so much of the time what you think is green is actually yellow. What you need to be manipulating is yellow. If I go to yellows and start to move these sliders around, you'll see a big difference in those areas. So in fact, you can see that's what I did. I didn't go to greens and selective color. I went to yellows and then made the changes that I needed to make to have the effect on the green in that part of the image. So I just wanted to point that out. Let's say this is where we started and this is where we ended up. Would love to hear your feedback about the work that we did today and the things that we talked about. Where this image started out is absolutely just fantastic. Derek is as far as working with a big traditional near to far scenic landscape, has created a stunning image here. Great quality of light, great camera placement, really strong sense of visual balance and unity. I want to say a big thank you to Derek for sharing this image with us. I want to say a big thank you to you for being here. Hope to see you again real soon on the Daily Critique.